Hello everyone and thanks for subscribing to my channel. If you haven't, please press subscribe now so you'll be notified when my new videos are posted, and thanks to everybody who supports me through buying me a coffee as well. Today, Wednesday, I'd like to speak about Micheál Martin, who has appeared back in Ireland after his number of junkets. Last week he was in Brazil, over the weekend he was in South Africa, and then stopped off in Angola to get a bit of a message of the European Union leaders, Ursula von der Leyen and others, in terms of what his approach would be over the next period of time. Of course, he is a good little branch manager for von der Leyen, managing Ireland as a corporation, not as a country that serves the needs of its citizens. And on his way back, he stopped off in Áras Neutron to have a nice, cosy fireside chat with Catherine Connolly, the new Irish president. Of course, Connolly was elected on the 25th of October in a two-horse race that really showed up the undemocratic nature of the Irish political system. Now, she had a lovely chat with Martin yesterday. Of course, they're all good old friends. And Martin, under the Constitution, is supposed to inform the President of international and domestic matters. This is under Article 28 of the Irish Constitution. But he said that Catherine Connolly is a lawyer and understands the framework of being the President. Of course, she's a very safe pair of hands for the establishment. And he previously said that he didn't foresee any difficulties with Catherine Connolly in the role as President. Now, what was interesting, before he went to meet Catherine Connolly, he had a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. So has anybody known in Ireland that we've signed up to this Coalition of the Willing? I, for one, propose we should start the Coalition of the Unwilling, that stands up for the interests of Ireland and stands up for neutrality or independence and sovereignty, and not just be a vassal of Brussels or Washington DC or whatever imperial power tries to bat its eyelids at Micheál Martin. Now, what was interesting in his remarks, he said that Ireland should stand up for European security. That's very interesting, isn't it? What about the Nord Stream explosion? We'll say nothing about that, Micheál. And he also said he has full and unequivocal support for Ukraine. And he said he wants to look for an immediate end to the war. And he said the European and other European allies are involved in shaping this immediate end to the war. And he said nothing but Europe without Europe. Well done, Micheál. And he also said the acceleration of Ukrainians' membership towards the European Union should be fast-tracked. And he also said they should be mobilising the Russian assets. Very interesting. This comes on the same day when the remarks were made by von der Leyen about trying to mobilise and use the frozen Russian assets, upwards of about 140 to 150 billion euro. That's currently causing major consternation within the financial institutions around Europe and many countries around the world in terms of the imminent season of Russian assets at the behest of von der Leyen and their plan to try and keep the war machine going in Europe. But the question really is, as Zelensky is supposed to visit within the next week to Ireland, have we done enough for Ukraine? Over 120,000 Ukrainians have come here as beneficiaries of temporary direction in terms of the directive that was issued by the European Commission that the Irish lapdogs were all too willing to sign up to. And of course, with the latest calling for harsher restrictions on the immigration system in Ireland, of course, this doesn't apply to Ukrainians who have a special status according to the European Commission. And not only the amount of money that's been spent on accommodation and the basic services for Ukrainians coming to Ireland, per capita one of the highest in Europe, have been taken in Ireland. But at the same time, we see a huge pressure on our basic public services and lack of social resources being invested in those services up and down the country, and people are suffering. But of course, an explosion in population is nothing to worry about when you're Micheál Martin, who's more interested in representing his masters in Brussels, as a good branch manager should. Now, at the same time, in the last couple of years, over 300 million €380 million also has been spent on political, humanitarian, economic and non-lethal aid, according to reports of the Irish government spending. In September, 34 vehicles were passed across the Ukrainians, 3 bomb disposal units and 5 radar systems. And on top of this, a further erosion of our neutrality. 23 modules of training to the armed forces of Ukraine have been given under the European Union Military Assistance Mission. So this a la carte approach to our neutrality. No wonder Micheál Martin wants to rip up the triple lock. And of course they've raided the European Peace Facility for non-lethal military aid. Well, let's see how that develops over the next period of time. And we all know that Ukraine is one of the most corrupt, if not one of the most corrupt in Europe in terms of currently the crisis facing Zelensky is around the energy corruption of over €100 million, notwithstanding the billions of euro that has been transferred there from the United States public purse and from European public wealth into the money laundering machine that is Ukraine. And we all know that Zelensky was backed by Connolly, who was a massive oligarch in Ukraine, media mogul, who set up his organization at the behest of those who are benefiting from this war, in proxy war in Ukraine. And of course, at the same time, he put him in place as the servant of the people, main character in a TV show that subsequently became a political party. Isn't that interesting? And he also went on the attack on a number of his political opponents in the presidential election that Zelensky won on a platform of peace, with 73% of the vote and against corruption. But he has been mired in corruption himself, Zelensky, named in the Pandora Papers with his offshore companies, transferring companies to his friends, properties all around the world to his friends also, and notwithstanding the profits he and his regime are making from this proxy war, and those as well who they support in this proxy war. There's no mention in Europe, of course, of those neo-Nazi elements that he has massive part of his armed forces, the Banderites, in Ukraine. So this is what's taken place, and of course they always portray this as a fight for democracy, values and freedom. But of course it's a ruse to try and drag us towards more militarism in the European Union rather than stand up for peace. But at the same time, the Irish government, and we can see as my initial comments and remarks in relation to the meeting and the cosy fireside chat between Martin and Connolly, demonstrates that perhaps she's a safe pair of hands for the establishment. And as I said earlier, Catherine Connolly is a lawyer and understands the framework, much the same when she was using her position to work for financial institutions in home repossession cases. Of course, she was only doing her job then, wasn't it? So much for a vote for change. So let's see how this plays out over the next period of time. Thanks so much for supporting my videos. Please share them. Please press subscribe so you'll be notified when my videos are posted. And thanks so much for all your comments as well. And take care. Slán go fóill. See you soon.